What if criticism wasn't an attack, but a gift? It's a question that might catch you off guard, but it's at the heart of how Stoics approach life's challenges. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's greatest Stoic philosophers, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the essence of what we're diving into today: how to turn criticism into a powerful tool for growth, resilience, and self-awareness. Criticism is something we all face, whether it's from a boss, a friend, or even a stranger online. Most of us instinctively react with defensiveness or frustration. But what if, instead of seeing criticism as a threat, we saw it as an opportunity? The Stoics believed that our perception determines our reality. By shifting how we view criticism, we can transform it into a catalyst for personal development. In this video, we'll explore practical Stoic tools to help you build resilience, strengthen your self-awareness, and use criticism as a stepping stone to becoming the best version of yourself. This isn't just about enduring criticism, it's about thriving because of it. So, if you're ready to uncover how to master the art of resilience and turn every critique into a chance for growth, let's begin. The Stoics had a unique way of looking at criticism, one that can completely change how we experience it. They didn't see criticism as inherently good or bad. Instead, they viewed it as something external, outside of our control. Epictetus, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, put it simply: it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. In other words, criticism is just an event like the weather. It's neutral. What gives it meaning is how we choose to respond. Think about it this way: when someone criticizes you, they're sharing their perspective, their opinion. But that opinion doesn't define you. It's not a fact. It's just their interpretation of what they see. The Stoics believed that the only thing truly within our control is our own mind, our thoughts, our reactions, our choices. Everything else, including what others say about us, is outside of our control. That's a liberating idea, isn't it? Criticism isn't a judgment on your worth. It's just another external event, like a passing cloud. Let's bring this into a modern context. Imagine you're at work and your manager gives you feedback on a project. Maybe they point out areas where you could improve. It's easy to take that personally, to feel like you've failed. But according to the Stoics, that feedback isn't a reflection of your value as a person. It's just information, a chance to learn, grow, and refine your skills. The real question is, how will you choose to interpret it? Will you see it as an attack or as an opportunity? This is where the Stoic distinction between what's within our control and what isn't becomes so powerful. By recognizing that criticism falls into the outside our control category, we free ourselves from the emotional weight of it. We can step back, assess it objectively, and decide how to use it. That's the essence of resilience, not letting external events dictate our internal state. So, here's something to reflect on. How often do you let criticism define your self-worth? Do you allow someone else's words to shape how you see yourself, or do you take that power back? The Stoics remind us that we always have a choice. Criticism doesn't have to be a burden. It can be a tool if we let it, and that's where the real growth begins. The Stoics understood something profound about human nature. Our suffering often comes not from the events themselves, but from how we perceive them. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, put it perfectly when he said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Think about that for a moment. When someone criticizes us, we don't just hear their words, we interpret them, spin them into stories, and often blow them out of proportion. It's not the criticism that hurts, it's the meaning we attach to it. This is where the power of perception comes into play. Stoicism teaches us that our minds are like filters. We can choose to see criticism as a personal attack, or we can choose to see it as an opportunity for growth. The first approach leaves us feeling defeated and defensive. The second approach empowers us to learn, adapt, and improve. It's not about ignoring the criticism or pretending it doesn't sting. It's about reframing it, shifting our perspective so that it serves us rather than harms us. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you're in a meeting and a colleague points out a mistake in your presentation. Your initial reaction might be embarrassment or frustration. But what if, instead of focusing on the discomfort, you asked yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I use this feedback to do better next time? That simple shift in perspective transforms the criticism from a blow to your ego into a stepping stone for improvement. Suddenly, it's not about what went wrong, it's about what you can do right. One powerful way to practice this reframing is through journaling. When you receive criticism, take a few minutes to write down exactly what was said. Then ask yourself, what's the objective truth here? What's my emotional reaction and why? What can I take away from this to grow? This exercise helps you separate the facts from the feelings, giving you clarity and control over how you respond. It's not about dismissing your emotions, it's about understanding them so you can move forward with purpose. So here's a question to consider. What's one criticism you've misperceived as a personal attack? Maybe it was a comment from a family member, a critique at work, or even something you overheard in passing. How did your interpretation shape your reaction? And how might a different perspective have changed the outcome? The Stoics remind us that we have the power to choose how we see the world, and that choice can make all the difference. By mastering the art of perception, we not only build resilience but also unlock the potential for growth in every challenge we face. One of the most transformative practices in Stoicism is the art of cognitive detachment, learning to separate ourselves from the opinions of others. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, often reflected on this idea, writing in his personal journal, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." At its core, this principle reminds us that while we can't control what others say or think about us, we can control how we internalize it. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means freedom from letting external opinions dictate our self-worth or derail our progress. Take Socrates, for example. The ancient Greek philosopher faced relentless public criticism and even ridicule for his unconventional ideas. Yet he remained steadfast in his commitment to truth and virtue, famously stating, "An unexamined life is not worth living." Even when his critics accused him of corrupting the youth and sentenced him to death, Socrates didn't waver. He didn't seek their approval or validation. Instead, he focused on living in alignment with his values, knowing that his integrity was more important than their opinions. His ability to detach from external judgment allowed him to face his fate with remarkable calm and dignity. What can we learn from Socrates? That the opinions of others, no matter how loud or harsh, don't define us. When we cling to needing others' approval, we give away our power. We become like a ship tossed by the waves, constantly seeking validation to stay afloat. But when we detach, when we anchor ourselves in our own values and principles, we find stability. Criticism, praise, and judgment become like the wind. They may blow, but they can't move us unless we let them. This doesn't mean we should ignore feedback or dismiss all criticism. On the contrary, Stoicism teaches us to evaluate it objectively without attaching our self-worth to it. Ask yourself, is this feedback aligned with my values? Does it help me grow, or is it simply noise? By focusing on what truly matters, our own growth, our own integrity, we can sift through the opinions of others and take only what serves us. So here's a question to ponder. What would it feel like to let go of needing others' approval? Imagine a life where your sense of worth isn't tied to external validation, where criticism doesn't shake your confidence, and where praise doesn't inflate your ego. It's not about becoming indifferent to the world, it's about becoming deeply rooted in yourself. And that's where true resilience begins. When we stop seeking approval and start living by our own standards, we unlock a profound sense of freedom, one that allows us to grow, thrive, and face life's challenges with unshakable calm. Now, let's talk about self-awareness, a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy and a key ingredient in mastering how we respond to criticism. Epictetus, the Stoic teacher who began his life as a slave, often emphasized the importance of self-examination. He believed that true freedom comes from knowing ourselves deeply, our strengths, our weaknesses, and the areas where we can grow. Without self-awareness, criticism can feel like a random attack, leaving us defensive and unsure. But with it, we gain the clarity to separate constructive feedback from empty noise. Self-awareness starts with honesty. It's about looking at ourselves without flinching, acknowledging where we fall short, and celebrating where we excel. The Stoics called this practice the examined life, and it's a habit that transforms how we interact with the world. When we truly understand our own flaws and strengths, criticism loses its sting. Instead of reacting emotionally, we can evaluate it objectively. Is this feedback pointing to a genuine area where I can improve, or is it simply someone else's opinion unrelated to my growth? Self-awareness gives us the tools to ask these questions and find the answers. Here's a practical exercise to build self-awareness. Take a moment to write down 3 areas of your life where you could improve. Don't judge yourself as you do this, just observe. Maybe it's a tendency to procrastinate, a habit of interrupting others, or difficulty staying calm under pressure. The goal isn't to beat yourself up, it's to create a clear picture of where you stand. When you know your weak points, criticism becomes less threatening. You can see it for what it is, a mirror reflecting areas where you already know you can grow. But self-awareness isn't just about identifying flaws, it's also about recognizing your strengths. What are you naturally good at? What qualities do others often compliment you on? By balancing an understanding of both your strengths and weaknesses, you create a grounded sense of self. This balance helps you navigate criticism with confidence, knowing that no single comment defines you. You're a work in progress, and every piece of feedback, whether positive or negative, is just another tool to help you refine that work. So, here's a question to reflect on. What's one area of your life where you could benefit from honest self-reflection? Maybe it's a relationship, a career goal, or a personal habit. Whatever it is, take a moment to consider it without judgment. The Stoics remind us that self-awareness is the first step toward growth. When we know ourselves deeply, we can face criticism with calm and clarity, turning every critique into an opportunity to become a little better than we were yesterday. And isn't that what resilience is all about? Let's talk about imperfection, something we all share but often struggle to accept. The Stoics had a refreshing perspective on this. They saw imperfection not as a flaw, but as a fundamental part of being human. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most eloquent voices, put it simply, "No one is born wise." Think about that. Wisdom isn't something we're born with, it's something we earn through experience, mistakes, and yes, even criticism. This idea can be incredibly liberating if we let it sink in. Instead of striving for an impossible standard of perfection, we can embrace our imperfections as stepping stones on the path to growth. Consider this: when you make a mistake, how do you react? Do you beat yourself up, or do you see it as a chance to learn? The Stoics would argue that every error is an opportunity, a moment to gain insight, adjust your approach, and move forward with greater understanding. This mindset shifts the way we view criticism too. When someone points out a flaw, it's not an indictment of your worth, it's an invitation to improve. By accepting that we're all works in progress, criticism becomes less threatening and more constructive. Take the story of Thomas Edison, for example. He famously failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. When asked about his repeated failures, he said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That's the Stoic spirit in action. Edison didn't see his imperfections as setbacks. He saw them as essential steps toward success. His resilience wasn't rooted in never making mistakes. It was rooted in learning from them. And that's the key. When we normalize imperfection, we take the pressure off ourselves to be flawless. We can approach life with curiosity and openness, knowing that every misstep is part of the journey. But how do we actually apply this in our own lives? Start by reframing how you think about mistakes. Instead of viewing them as failures, see them as feedback. When you receive criticism, ask yourself, what can this teach me? How can I use this to grow? By shifting your focus from defensiveness to curiosity, you create space for resilience to flourish. And over time, this approach becomes second nature. You'll find yourself less rattled by criticism and more empowered by it. So, here's a question to sit with. How can you see your imperfections as opportunities for growth? Maybe it's a habit you've been trying to change, a skill you're still mastering, or a relationship you're working to improve. Whatever it is, remember that imperfection isn't a barrier, it's a bridge. Every flaw, every mistake, every piece of criticism is a chance to learn, adapt, and become a little wiser. And that's the beauty of embracing imperfection. It doesn't just make us more resilient, it makes us more human. One of the most underrated skills in handling criticism is the ability to listen, not just hear the words, but truly absorb them without letting ego or emotion cloud your judgment. Marcus Aurelius, in his timeless wisdom, offered a simple yet profound piece of advice. Listen to what others say, but judge for yourself. This isn't about blindly accepting every critique that comes your way. It's about creating a space between the criticism and your reaction, a moment of pause where you can evaluate it thoughtfully, free from the heat of the moment. Think about how criticism usually unfolds. Someone offers feedback and almost instantly our minds start racing. We might feel attacked, misunderstood, or even angry. Defensiveness kicks in, and instead of truly hearing what's being said, we're already crafting our rebuttal. The Stoics, however, teach us to resist that impulse. They encourage us to listen actively, not to prove a point or protect our ego, but to understand. What's the core message here? Is there something valuable hidden in these words, even if they're delivered imperfectly? Active listening requires humility. It means setting aside the need to be right and opening yourself to the possibility that you might have room to grow. Imagine this: you're in a conversation and someone offers feedback that feels harsh or unfair. Instead of firing back or shutting down, you take a deep breath. You listen not just to their words but to the intent behind them. Maybe there's a kernel of truth there, something you can learn from, even if it's wrapped in criticism. That's the Stoic approach, extracting value from every experience, even the uncomfortable ones. Here's a practical tip to try the next time you receive criticism. Pause before responding. Count to 3, take a breath, or even excuse yourself for a moment if you need to. That small gap gives you time to process what was said and respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. It's not about agreeing with everything you hear. It's about giving yourself the chance to evaluate it calmly and decide whether it's worth acting on. So, here's a question to reflect on. When was the last time you truly listened to criticism without reacting emotionally? It's not easy, is it? But that's where the growth happens, in those moments when we choose to lean in rather than pull away. By mastering the art of listening, we not only become more resilient but also more open to the lessons life is trying to teach us. And in doing so, we transform criticism from a source of tension into a tool for transformation. There's a moment, a split second between criticism and our reaction to it. The Stoics called this moment the pause, and it's one of the most powerful tools we have for maintaining control over our emotions. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who taught the importance of self-mastery, often emphasized the need to slow down our impulses. He said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." In other words, before you react, take a breath, think. This pause is where reason takes the reins, guiding us away from emotional chaos and toward clarity. Imagine this: you're in a heated conversation and someone says something that feels like a personal jab. Your instinct might be to fire back, to defend yourself, or to lash out. But what if instead you paused? What if in that moment of silence you gave yourself the space to step back and ask, why am I feeling this way? Is this reaction serving me, or is it just feeding the fire? That pause, even if it's just a few seconds, can completely change the trajectory of the conversation. It allows you to respond with intention rather than impulse, with wisdom rather than anger. The Stoic pause isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about creating a buffer between what happens to us and how we choose to act. Think of it like a mental reset button. When you pause, you're not just avoiding a knee-jerk reaction. You're giving yourself the chance to align your response with your values. Maybe that means responding with calm assertiveness instead of defensiveness. Maybe it means choosing not to engage at all. The power lies in the choice. Let's bring this into a modern context. Say you're at work and a colleague criticizes your idea in front of the team. Your first instinct might be to argue or to shut down. But what if instead you took a moment to breathe? What if you used that pause to consider their perspective, to evaluate whether their feedback has merit, and to decide how to respond in a way that reflects your best self? That's the Stoic pause in action. It's not about winning the argument, it's about maintaining your integrity and composure, no matter what happens. So here's a question to reflect on. What would change if you paused before reacting to criticism? How might that small shift transform your relationships, your mindset, and even your sense of self? The Stoic pause isn't just a tool for handling criticism. It's a practice that builds resilience, self-awareness, and emotional mastery. And the best part, it's always within your control. All it takes is a breath, a moment, and the willingness to choose reason over reaction. Criticism, as the Stoics saw it, is nothing more than feedback in disguise. It's not about tearing you down. It's about offering you a mirror, a chance to see yourself more clearly. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher known for his profound wisdom, once said, "The wise person learns from everyone." This idea is a game changer when it comes to how we handle criticism. It's not about agreeing with everything everyone says, but about being open enough to ask, what can I learn here? Is there a grain of truth in this, even if it's delivered poorly? Let's be honest, no one enjoys hearing criticism, especially when it feels harsh or unfair. It's natural to want to defend ourselves or dismiss it outright. But the Stoics challenge us to look deeper. What if buried beneath the tone or the delivery, there's something valuable? What if that criticism, no matter how uncomfortable, is pointing to an area where we could actually improve? This is where the Stoic mindset shines. By reframing criticism as feedback, we stop seeing it as an attack and start seeing it as an opportunity. Here's a practical way to put this into action. The next time you receive criticism, no matter how it's delivered, try this exercise. Identify one actionable takeaway. Ask yourself, what's one thing I can learn or improve from this? It might be as simple as recognizing a pattern in how others perceive you or uncovering a blind spot in your behavior. The goal isn't to dwell on the negativity, it's to extract something useful, something that can help you grow. For example, imagine a friend tells you that you tend to interrupt during conversations. Your first reaction might be defensiveness. I don't mean to, I'm just excited. But instead of stopping there, take a moment to reflect. Is there truth to this observation? Could it be an area where you could improve your communication skills? By focusing on the actionable takeaway, listening more intentionally, you turn what could have been a tense moment into a stepping stone for personal growth. This approach doesn't mean you have to accept every piece of criticism as gospel truth. It simply means being open to the possibility that there's something to learn, even from the least likely sources. Sometimes the harshest critiques come from places we least expect, and yet they can reveal truths we might otherwise overlook. The Stoics remind us that wisdom isn't about being right, it's about being open to growth. So here's a question to reflect on. What's one piece of criticism you've dismissed that might actually hold some truth? Maybe it's something a coworker said about your work habits, or a comment from a loved one about your behavior. Instead of brushing it off, take a moment to consider it. Is there a lesson there waiting to be uncovered? By embracing criticism as feedback, you not only become more resilient, you become wiser, more self-aware, and better equipped to navigate life's challenges. And isn't that what growth is all about? Humility is often misunderstood. It's not about diminishing yourself or downplaying your worth. It's about recognizing that none of us have all the answers. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, once wrote, "No one is so wise that they cannot learn." This simple yet profound statement captures the essence of humility in Stoicism. It's an acknowledgement that no matter how much we know, there's always room to grow. And when it comes to criticism, humility is the key that unlocks its transformative power. Think about it. When we approach criticism with humility, we let go of the need to prove ourselves right. We stop seeing it as an attack and start seeing it as a chance to learn. Humility softens our defensiveness, allowing us to listen more openly and reflect more deeply. It's not about agreeing with every critique, it's about being willing to consider it. This mindset shift doesn't just make us more resilient, it makes us more adaptable, more teachable, and ultimately more capable of growth. Take the example of Abraham Lincoln, one of history's most revered leaders. During the Civil War, Lincoln faced relentless criticism from all sides: politicians, the press, even his own cabinet. Yet, instead of dismissing his critics, he often sought out their perspectives. He famously said, "I have always found that mercy bears richer fruits than strict justice." This wasn't just a political strategy, it was a reflection of his humility. Lincoln understood that admitting mistakes and learning from criticism wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a mark of strength. His ability to embrace humility in the face of immense pressure not only helped him navigate one of the most tumultuous periods in American history, but also earned him enduring respect. So, what does this look like in our own lives? Imagine you're in a situation where someone points out a mistake you've made. Instead of immediately defending yourself, you pause and ask, "What can I learn from this?" That's humility in action. It's not about self-criticism, it's about self-awareness. By acknowledging that you're not perfect, you create space for improvement. And in doing so, you turn criticism from a source of tension into a pathway for progress. Here's a question to reflect on. How can humility transform your relationship with criticism? What would it feel like to approach feedback not as a threat, but as an opportunity to grow? When we embrace humility, we free ourselves from the need to always be right. We become more open, more curious, and more resilient. And in that openness, we find the courage to face life's challenges, not just with strength, but with grace. Let's talk about the Stoic shield, a mental and emotional barrier that helps us deflect unjust criticism and protect our inner peace. This isn't about building walls or shutting people out. It's about creating a space where external opinions can't shake your core. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who endured slavery and hardship, taught that the key to resilience lies in focusing only on what's within our control. Some things are up to us and some are not, he said, and criticism, it's firmly in the not up to us category. The Stoic shield is the practice of recognizing that truth and using it to stay calm, composed, and unshaken. Imagine criticism as arrows being shot at you. Without a shield, those arrows can pierce your emotional armor, leaving you wounded and reactive. But with a Stoic shield, you can let those arrows glance off without causing harm. How? By reminding yourself that the words of others don't define you. Their opinions, their judgments, their harsh words, they're external. They don't have the power to affect your inner peace unless you give them that power. The shield is your decision to focus on what you can control, your thoughts, your reactions, and your values. Here's a practical tool to help you build that shield, a Stoic mantra. A mantra is a short, powerful phrase you can repeat to yourself when criticism strikes. It's a way to ground yourself, to remind yourself of your inner strength and what truly matters. For example, you might say, "This is not about me," or "I am in control of my response." Even something as simple as "this too shall pass" can help you maintain perspective in the heat of the moment. The key is to choose a phrase that resonates with you, one that helps you stay centered and calm. Let's bring this to life with an example. Say you're in a meeting and a coworker criticizes your idea in a way that feels unfair. Instead of reacting defensively, you take a deep breath and silently repeat your mantra. "This is not about me." That small act creates a mental buffer, giving you the space to process the criticism without letting it dictate your emotions. It doesn't mean you ignore the feedback. It means you approach it with clarity and composure rather than defensiveness or anger. So, here's a question to reflect on. What's one phrase you can use to remind yourself of your inner strength? It could be a Stoic quote, a personal affirmation, or even a simple reminder of your values. The Stoic shield isn't about avoiding criticism. It's about facing it with resilience and grace. By arming yourself with this tool, you not only protect your inner peace but also cultivate a sense of calm that allows you to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. And in doing so, you turn criticism into an opportunity to demonstrate your strength, your poise, and your commitment to growth. Adversity, as the Stoics saw it, is not something to avoid, it's something to embrace. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most influential voices, put it this way: "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." Think about that for a moment. Just as lifting weights builds muscle, facing challenges builds resilience. Criticism, in this light, isn't a setback, it's a training ground. It's the friction that sharpens our character, the resistance that makes us stronger. The Stoics believed that every obstacle, every piece of criticism, is an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to become more resilient. Consider the modern athlete, for example. When a coach criticizes a player's technique or performance, it's not meant to tear them down. It's meant to push them to improve, to refine their skills, and to reach new levels of excellence. Take Serena Williams, one of the greatest tennis players of all time. Throughout her career, she's faced countless critiques about her game, her attitude, even her body. But instead of letting those criticisms defeat her, she used them as fuel. She worked harder, trained smarter, and proved her critics wrong time and time again. That's the Stoic spirit in action, turning adversity into advantage and criticism into growth. This idea isn't just for athletes, though, it's for all of us. When someone criticizes us, whether it's about our work, our relationships, or even our choices, it's an invitation to reflect and improve. It's not about proving the critic wrong or defending ourselves. It's about asking, what can I take from this? How can I use this feedback to become better? This mindset shifts criticism from a source of pain to a source of power. By seeing it as a teacher, we transform it into a tool for building resilience, character, and strength. Here's the thing, growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in the discomfort, in the moments when we're pushed to our limits and forced to confront our weaknesses. That's where the magic happens. That's where we discover what we're truly capable of. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They didn't run from adversity, they leaned into it. They saw it as a necessary part of the journey, a stepping stone on the path to wisdom and self-mastery. So here's a question to reflect on. What's one criticism that has made you stronger? Maybe it was a comment from a colleague that pushed you to refine your skills, or feedback from a loved one that helped you see a blind spot. Whatever it was, consider how it shaped you. How did you grow from it? By embracing criticism as a teacher, you not only build resilience, you unlock the potential to become the best version of yourself. And that's the true value of adversity. It doesn't just challenge us, it changes us for the better. Let's explore the idea of the Stoic Mirror, a powerful tool for using criticism as a reflection of our actions and choices. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, often turned inward, writing in his personal journal, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you ever dig." This practice of self-examination is at the heart of Stoicism. It's about seeing criticism not as an attack but as a mirror, one that reveals our blind spots, challenges our assumptions, and helps us align more closely with our values. Imagine criticism as a mirror held up to you. Sometimes what you see might be uncomfortable, a habit you didn't realize you had, a pattern of behavior that's out of sync with your intentions. But discomfort isn't the enemy, it's the catalyst for growth. The Stoic Mirror isn't about shaming yourself or dwelling on flaws. It's about using feedback to see yourself more clearly, to identify areas where you can grow, and to ensure your actions align with the person you want to be. Consider this: when someone criticizes you, what if you paused and asked, "What can this teach me about myself?" Maybe it's pointing to a tendency to interrupt in conversations, a habit of procrastination, or a lack of follow-through. These aren't indictments of your character, they are opportunities for self-awareness. By seeing criticism as a mirror, you shift the focus from defensiveness to curiosity. You stop asking, "Why are they saying this?" and start asking, "What can I learn from this?" One practical way to put this into action is through journaling. Set aside a few minutes after receiving criticism to reflect on what was said. Write down the feedback, then ask yourself, is there truth to this? Does it align with my values? How can I use this to improve? This exercise isn't about agreeing with every critique, it's about extracting the lessons that can help you grow. Over time, this practice builds a habit of self-examination, helping you see criticism not as a threat but as a guide. Here's a question to reflect on. What blind spots might criticism be revealing in your life? Maybe it's a tendency to avoid difficult conversations, a habit of overcommitting, or a pattern of reacting defensively. Whatever it is, the Stoic Mirror invites you to look deeper. By embracing this practice, you don't just become more resilient to criticism, you become more aligned with your values, more aware of your growth areas, and more committed to living with integrity. And that's where true transformation begins. Now, let's talk about gratitude, a practice that might seem out of place when dealing with criticism, but the Stoics saw it as essential. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned adversity into wisdom, once said, "Every difficulty is an opportunity." This simple idea is a game changer. It reminds us that even the most uncomfortable moments, like criticism, can be gifts in disguise. Gratitude doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect. It means recognizing the value in every experience, especially the ones that challenge us. Think about it this way: when someone criticizes you, it's easy to focus on the discomfort, the sting of their words. But what if, instead of dwelling on the negative, you paused and asked, "What's the opportunity here?" Criticism, after all, is a form of feedback. It's a chance to learn, to grow, to see yourself more clearly. By practicing gratitude, you shift your perspective. You stop seeing criticism as an attack and start seeing it as a teacher. This shift doesn't just reduce negativity, it transforms it into something productive. Here's a practical exercise to try. The next time you receive criticism, take a moment to list 3 things you're grateful for. It could be gratitude for the opportunity to improve, for the person who cared enough to give feedback, or even for the resilience you're building by facing the challenge. This simple act of gratitude reframes the experience. Instead of feeling defeated, you feel empowered. Instead of focusing on what's wrong, you focus on what's possible. For example, imagine a coworker points out a mistake in your work. Your first instinct might be frustration or embarrassment, but what if instead you took a deep breath and thought, "I'm grateful for the chance to improve. I'm grateful for the feedback that helps me grow. I'm grateful for the resilience I'm building by handling this well." That shift in mindset changes everything. It doesn't erase the criticism, but it changes how you experience it. Gratitude, in this sense, is like a lens. It helps you see criticism not as a threat, but as an invitation to grow, to learn, and to become more resilient. It's not about ignoring the hard parts, it's about finding the good in them. And when you do, something amazing happens. You stop fearing criticism and start embracing it as a tool for growth. So here's a question to reflect on. How can gratitude help you see criticism differently? What's one thing you could be grateful for, even in the face of feedback that feels harsh or unfair? By practicing gratitude, you don't just survive criticism, you thrive because of it. And that's the true power of the Stoic mindset, finding strength not in spite of challenges, but because of them. The Stoic response to criticism isn't about winning an argument or proving a point. It's about maintaining your composure and dignity. Seneca, one of Stoicism's greatest thinkers, captured this perfectly when he advised, "Respond, don't react." Those 3 words hold the key to handling criticism with grace. Reacting is impulsive, emotional, and often escalates the situation. Responding, on the other hand, is measured, thoughtful, and grounded in reason. It's the difference between letting criticism control you and taking control of the situation yourself. Think about how this plays out in real life. When someone criticizes you, especially in a heated moment, your first instinct might be to defend yourself or lash out. But the Stoic approach invites you to pause, take a breath, ask yourself, what's the most constructive way to handle this? By responding calmly, you not only disarm the critic but also demonstrate a level of self-control that commands respect. It's not about agreeing with everything they say. It's about showing that their words don't have the power to rattle you. Let's bring this into the modern world, where criticism often comes in the form of online negativity. Imagine scrolling through social media and coming across a harsh comment about something you've posted. Your first impulse might be to fire back with an equally cutting remark. But what if instead you took a moment to respond thoughtfully? Maybe you acknowledge their perspective, even if you don't agree with it, or simply choose not to engage at all. This measured approach not only preserves your peace of mind, but also prevents the situation from spiraling into unnecessary conflict. It's a powerful way to rise above the noise and maintain your dignity. The beauty of the Stoic response is that it shifts the focus from the critic to you. Instead of worrying about what they've said, you concentrate on how you'll respond. This mindset doesn't just protect your emotional well-being, it also sends a clear message: you're not easily shaken. Over time, this calm, reasoned approach can even change how others interact with you. People begin to see you as someone who handles criticism with maturity, and that alone can reduce the frequency and intensity of negative feedback. So, here's a question to reflect on. What's one situation where you could have responded more calmly to criticism? Maybe it was a disagreement with a friend, a tense moment at work, or even an online exchange that left you feeling defensive. how might a Stoic response have changed the outcome? By practicing this approach, you're not just managing criticism, you're mastering it. And in doing so, you're building a resilience that allows you to face life's challenges with calm, clarity, and an unshakable sense of self. Sometimes the most powerful response to criticism isn't a clever comeback or a well-reasoned argument, it's silence. Marcus Aurelius, who spent much of his life reflecting on the nature of control and composure, once wrote, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." Silence, in this sense, isn't about ignoring criticism or avoiding conflict. It's about choosing not to engage in the heat of the moment, to let the storm pass without adding fuel to the fire. It's a deliberate act of self-control, a way to preserve your inner peace and prevent the situation from escalating. Think about how arguments often unfold. Someone criticizes you, and before you know it, emotions are running high, words are exchanged, and the conversation spirals out of control. But silence changes the dynamic. When you choose not to respond immediately, you create space to think, to breathe, to let your emotions settle. This pause isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. It's a reminder that you're in control of your reactions, even when the world around you feels chaotic. One practical way to practice this is by counting to 10 before speaking. It's a simple technique, but it's surprisingly effective. When you feel the urge to react defensively or lash out, take a moment to pause, count silently to 10, and in that time, ask yourself, will responding help the situation? Or will it only make things worse? Often, you'll find that silence is the wiser choice. It allows you to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, and it gives the other person room to reflect on their own words. Silence also has a way of disarming critics. When someone expects a reaction, whether it's anger, defensiveness, or even agreement, and instead meets silence, it can disrupt their momentum. It creates a moment of uncertainty, a pause that often leads them to reconsider their approach. This doesn't mean you're avoiding the issue. It means you're choosing to address it on your own terms with clarity and composure. So, here's a question to reflect on. When has silence been your most effective response? Maybe it was during a heated argument with a loved one, a tense moment at work, or even an online exchange that could have spiraled out of control. By choosing silence, you're not just avoiding conflict, you're reclaiming your power. You're showing that your peace of mind is more important than winning an argument. And in doing so, you're practicing one of the most profound lessons of Stoicism, that true strength lies not in what you say, but in what you choose not to say. Now, let's talk about the Stoic filter, a mental tool that helps us separate the wheat from the chaff when it comes to criticism. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who taught the importance of discernment, once said, "Not everything that is said deserves attention." This simple yet profound idea is the foundation of the Stoic filter. It's about learning to sift through criticism, identifying what's useful and letting go of what's not. By doing this, we avoid wasting energy on irrelevant or unhelpful feedback and focus instead on what truly matters. Think of criticism as a stream of water flowing toward you. Some of it is clear and pure, carrying valuable insights you can use to grow. But some of it is muddy, filled with noise, bias, or even malice. The Stoic filter is your way of separating the two. It's not about dismissing all criticism or accepting it blindly. It's about applying discernment. Ask yourself, does this feedback align with my values? Is it pointing to something I can improve, or is it just noise? This practice helps you focus on constructive criticism while letting the rest flow past. Here's a practical exercise to help you build your Stoic filter. The next time you receive criticism, take a moment to categorize it. Divide it into 2 columns, useful and irrelevant. In the useful column, write down any feedback that's actionable, specific, or aligned with your goals. In the irrelevant column, jot down anything that feels vague, personal, or unrelated to your growth. This exercise isn't about judging the person giving the feedback, it's about clarifying what's worth your attention. Over time, you'll find it easier to filter out the noise and focus on what truly helps you improve. For example, imagine a coworker tells you, "Your presentation could have been more engaging." That's constructive, it's specific, and points to an area where you can grow. But if someone says, "You're just not good at public speaking," that's less helpful. It's a broad, unkind statement that doesn't offer any actionable insight. The Stoic filter helps you see the difference. You take the first comment to heart, using it to refine your skills, and let the second one go. It's not about ignoring the feedback, it's about choosing what to act on. So, here's a question to reflect on. How can you better filter criticism to focus on what matters? What's one piece of feedback you've received recently that you could categorize as useful or irrelevant? By practicing this kind of discernment, you not only protect your mental energy but also direct it toward growth. The Stoic filter isn't just a tool for handling criticism, it's a way to live more intentionally, focusing on what truly helps you move forward. And in doing so, you become not only more resilient but also more purposeful in your pursuit of growth. Courage is often seen as the ability to face physical danger or overwhelming odds, but in Stoicism, it takes on a broader meaning. It's about standing firm in the face of emotional challenges like criticism and refusing to let fear dictate your actions. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most eloquent voices, wrote, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." This idea reminds us that bravery isn't just about grand gestures, it's found in the everyday choices to confront discomfort, to face criticism head-on, and to grow through the experience. When criticism comes your way, it's natural to feel a pang of fear, fear of judgment, fear of failure, or even fear of change. But courage, as the Stoics understood it, isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite it. Imagine criticism as a locked door. Fear might tempt you to walk away, to avoid what's on the other side, but courage invites you to turn the key, to step through, and to discover what lies beyond. That's where growth happens, not in avoiding the door, but in opening it. Take the example of Socrates, the ancient philosopher who faced relentless criticism for his ideas. He was accused of corrupting the youth and undermining societal norms, yet he stood by his beliefs even when it cost him his life. His courage wasn't about defiance, it was about integrity. He chose to face his critics with calm and conviction, knowing that his values were more important than their opinions. In doing so, he transformed criticism from a threat into a testament of his character. Courage also plays a key role in how we interpret criticism. Instead of seeing it as a personal attack, courage allows us to ask, "What can I learn from this?" It shifts the focus from self-doubt to self-improvement, from defensiveness to curiosity. When we approach criticism with courage, we stop running from it and start engaging with it, not as a critic but as a student. And in that engagement, we find opportunities to grow, to refine our skills, and to deepen our understanding of ourselves. Here's a practical way to practice courage in the face of criticism. The next time you receive feedback that feels uncomfortable, take a moment to pause. Acknowledge the fear or discomfort that arises, but don't let it control you. Instead, ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen if I face this? Often, you'll find that the fear of criticism is far worse than the criticism itself. By confronting it, you not only build resilience, you also reclaim your power. So, here's a question to reflect on. What's one criticism you've avoided facing that you can address today? Maybe it's feedback from a colleague, a comment from a loved one, or even a critique you've been giving yourself. Whatever it is, take a step forward. Courage isn't about being fearless, it's about choosing to act in spite of fear. and in that choice you'll find the strength to turn criticism into an opportunity for growth and fear into a stepping stone for resilience. When criticism swirls around us, it can feel like being caught in a storm, disorienting, overwhelming, and even frightening. But the Stoics had a powerful tool to weather these moments, the Stoic Anchor. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king who faced immense challenges during his reign, often reminded himself to return to your principles. This simple yet profound advice is the essence of the Stoic Anchor. It's about grounding yourself in your core values, the beliefs that define who you are and what you stand for. When criticism threatens to pull you off course, your values become the anchor that keeps you steady. Think of your values as a compass. No matter how chaotic the seas around you, they point you in the right direction. When someone criticizes you, it's easy to feel lost or defensive. But if you pause and ask, what do I truly believe in? What matters most to me? You'll find a sense of clarity and stability. Your values remind you of your purpose, your integrity, and your guiding principles. They help you rise above the noise and respond with confidence, even when the criticism feels personal or unfair. Here's a practical way to build your Stoic anchor. Take a few minutes to write down your core values. What are the principles that guide your decisions and actions? Is it honesty, kindness, resilience, or something else? Keep this list somewhere visible, on your desk, in your journal, or even as a note on your phone. When criticism feels overwhelming, revisit it. Let your values ground you, reminding you of who you are and what you stand for. This exercise isn't about creating a shield to block out feedback. It's about creating a foundation that helps you process it with clarity and calm. For example, imagine you're at work and a colleague criticizes your approach to a project. Instead of reacting emotionally, you take a moment to reflect on your values. Maybe one of your core principles is collaboration. With that in mind, you can respond by asking, how can we work together to improve this? By anchoring yourself in your values, you shift the conversation from defensiveness to growth. You're not just reacting to the criticism, you're using it as an opportunity to align your actions with your principles. The Stoic Anchor also helps us recognize when criticism doesn't align with our values. Not every piece of feedback deserves our attention, and our values can help us discern what's worth considering and what's not. If someone criticizes you for something that goes against your principles, you can let it go, knowing it doesn't define you. Your values act as a filter, helping you focus on what truly matters. So, here's a question to reflect on. What values can you return to when criticism feels overwhelming? Is it integrity, compassion, perseverance, or something else entirely? By identifying and anchoring yourself in these principles, you create a source of strength that no amount of criticism can shake. The Stoic Anchor isn't just a tool for resilience, it's a reminder of who you are at your core. And when you hold onto that, you can face any storm with calm, clarity, and unshakable confidence. Patience is more than just waiting. It's a deliberate choice to slow down, to give yourself the space to think before you act. For the Stoics, patience was a cornerstone of resilience, a way to navigate life's challenges with calm and clarity. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who endured slavery and hardship, once said, "No great thing is created suddenly." This simple yet profound idea reminds us that growth takes time, and that includes how we handle criticism. When we rush to respond, we often react emotionally, defensively, or impulsively. But when we pause, when we allow ourselves the time to reflect, we create the opportunity to respond with intention and wisdom. Picture this: someone criticizes you, and your first instinct is to fire back, to defend yourself, or to prove them wrong. It's a natural reaction, but it's rarely the most productive one. The Stoics teach us that patience is the antidote to this impulse. It's about stepping back, taking a breath, and allowing yourself the time to process what's been said. This doesn't mean ignoring the criticism or avoiding the issue. It means approaching it thoughtfully, with a clear mind and a steady heart. One practical way to practice patience is to set aside time to reflect before responding. When criticism comes your way, especially if it feels harsh or unfair, give yourself permission to pause. You might say, "Thank you for your feedback. I'd like to take some time to think about this before I respond." That simple act of delaying your reaction creates a buffer, a space where you can evaluate the criticism objectively. Ask yourself, is there truth to this? How can I use it to grow? What's the best way to move forward? By taking this time, you transform what could have been a heated exchange into an opportunity for growth. Patience also helps us separate the message from the delivery. Sometimes criticism comes wrapped in frustration, anger, or even malice. In those moments, it's easy to focus on the tone and miss the message entirely. But patience allows us to look past the delivery and focus on the content. It's like sifting through sand to find the gold. You might have to dig a little, but the effort is worth it. By approaching criticism with patience, we can extract the value even from feedback that's delivered poorly. So, here's a question to reflect on. How can patience improve your response to criticism? The next time you're faced with feedback, big or small, try slowing down. Take a moment to breathe, to reflect, and to consider the best way forward. By practicing patience, you're not just managing criticism, you're mastering it. And in doing so, you're building a resilience that allows you to face life's challenges with calm, clarity, and an unshakable sense of purpose. The Stoic Compass is a powerful metaphor for how criticism can guide us toward personal growth. Think of it like this. When you're navigating unfamiliar terrain, a compass doesn't just tell you where you are, it points you in the direction you need to go. Criticism, when approached with the right mindset, can do the same. It can help us identify where we're off course and guide us back toward our goals. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, put it beautifully when he said, "Feedback is the path to wisdom." In other words, criticism isn't just noise, it's a signal pointing us toward areas where we can improve, refine, and grow. Imagine you're on a journey and every piece of feedback is like a signpost along the way. Some signs might feel harsh or confusing, but they're all there to help you stay on track. The Stoic Compass teaches us to see criticism as a tool for navigation, not as an obstacle. It's about shifting from "why are they saying this" to "what can I learn from this?" When we make that mental shift, criticism becomes less about judgment and more about growth. It's not about where you've gone wrong, it's about where you can go next. Here's a practical exercise to put this into action. Take a piece of criticism you've received recently and map it to an actionable step. Start by writing down the feedback. Then ask yourself, what's one specific thing I can do to address this? Maybe it's improving a skill, adjusting a behavior, or even just becoming more aware of a blind spot. The key is to turn the feedback into a clear, actionable goal. For example, if someone says you tend to interrupt during conversations, your actionable step might be to practice active listening, focusing fully on the speaker without jumping in. By mapping criticism to action, you're not just hearing the feedback, you're using it as a compass to guide your next steps. The beauty of the Stoic Compass is that it keeps us aligned with our values and goals. When criticism feels overwhelming, it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. But by treating it as a guide, we can stay focused on what truly matters. It's not about pleasing everyone or avoiding mistakes, it's about staying true to your path and using feedback to refine your journey. Every critique, no matter how small, can help you move closer to becoming the person you want to be. So here's something to reflect on. What direction can criticism guide you toward? Is it greater patience, improved communication, or deeper self-awareness? Whatever it is, remember that criticism isn't just a challenge, it's a compass pointing you toward growth, wisdom, and resilience. And when you use it that way, you're not just weathering the storm, you're charting a course toward your best self. Now, let's explore a tool that might seem surprising in the Stoic toolkit: empathy. At first glance, empathy and Stoicism might appear to be at odds. After all, Stoicism is often associated with emotional detachment. But the truth is, empathy plays a vital role in how we handle criticism. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, often reminded himself to put yourself in the shoes of others. This practice isn't about agreeing with your critics or dismissing your own feelings, it's about understanding where they're coming from, and in doing so, reducing the tension and conflict that criticism can create. When someone criticizes us, it's easy to jump to conclusions. We might assume they're being unfair or even malicious, but empathy invites us to pause and consider their perspective. What's driving their words? Are they coming from a place of frustration, concern, or even care? By stepping into their shoes, even for a moment, we can often uncover a deeper meaning behind their criticism. This doesn't mean we have to agree with them. It simply means we're choosing to approach the situation with curiosity rather than defensiveness. Empathy also has a remarkable way of diffusing conflict. When we show understanding, even to those who criticize us, it shifts the dynamic. Instead of a confrontation, the conversation becomes a dialogue. The critic feels heard, and in turn, they're often more open to hearing your perspective. This mutual understanding doesn't just reduce tension, it creates an opportunity for growth, both for you and for the person offering the feedback. Here's a practical exercise to help you practice empathy. The next time you receive criticism, take a moment to imagine the critic's intentions. Ask yourself, what might they be feeling or thinking that led them to say this? Maybe they're under pressure at work, or they're genuinely trying to help you improve. By understanding their motivations, you can respond with compassion rather than conflict. This exercise isn't about excusing harsh or unfair criticism. It's about finding a way to navigate it with grace and understanding. So, here's a question to reflect on. How can empathy change your reaction to criticism? What would it feel like to approach feedback not as an attack, but as an opportunity to connect and understand? By embracing empathy, you're not just building resilience, you're fostering a deeper sense of connection and compassion. And in doing so, you transform criticism from a source of tension into a bridge for understanding and growth. The Stoic approach to self-improvement is both empowering and grounding, as it balances the drive to grow with the wisdom of self-acceptance. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who taught us to focus on what's within our control, once said, "We cannot control others, but we can control ourselves." This simple yet profound idea is the foundation of the Stoic balance, a way to pursue growth without losing sight of our inherent worth. It's about striving to be better while also recognizing that perfection isn't the goal. True progress, the Stoics believed, comes from this harmony between effort and self-compassion. Think of it like tending to a garden. You nurture the plants, prune the weeds, and provide the right conditions for growth, but you also accept that some things, like the weather or the soil's natural limits, are beyond your control. In the same way, self-improvement requires effort, but it also requires the humility to acknowledge that we're human. We'll make mistakes, we'll fall short, and that's okay. The Stoic balance isn't about beating yourself up for where you are. It's about celebrating how far you've come, even as you keep moving forward. Here's where the Stoic balance becomes especially powerful. It prevents over-criticism. When we focus solely on what we need to improve, it's easy to fall into the trap of self-judgment. We start to see ourselves as projects that are never quite finished, and that mindset can be exhausting. But the Stoics remind us that growth isn't about fixing ourselves, it's about becoming more aligned with our values, one step at a time. By balancing self-improvement with self-acceptance, we avoid the burnout that comes from relentless self-criticism and instead cultivate a sense of purpose and calm. One practical way to practice this balance is to celebrate your progress alongside your goals for growth. For example, at the end of each week, take a moment to reflect on what you've accomplished, no matter how small. Maybe you handled a difficult conversation with more patience than usual, or you made progress on a project that's been challenging. Acknowledge those wins and then identify one area where you'd like to improve. This practice helps you stay grounded in the present while also keeping your eyes on the future. It's not about ignoring your flaws, it's about seeing yourself as a work in progress, not a problem to be solved. So here's a question to reflect on. How can you balance growth with self-compassion? Are there areas where you've been too hard on yourself, or moments where you've overlooked your progress? The Stoic balance invites us to embrace both sides of the equation, the drive to improve and the grace to accept where we are. When we do, we find a kind of resilience that's rooted not in perfection, but in purpose. And that's where true growth begins. Let's zoom out for a moment. Imagine you're standing on a mountaintop, looking down at the world below. From that height, the things that seemed so big and overwhelming, the criticism, the frustration, the sting of someone's words start to shrink. They don't disappear, but they lose their intensity. This is the power of perspective, a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy. Seneca, one of Stoicism's wisest voices, often reminded himself of the brevity of life. He wrote, "Life is long if you know how to use it." In other words, when we step back and see the bigger picture, the things that once seemed so urgent or painful often lose their grip on us. Criticism, when it hits, can feel like the end of the world. It's immediate, personal, and often all-consuming. But when we zoom out, we see it for what it truly is, a fleeting moment in the grand scheme of things. The Stoics teach us that perspective is a tool, a way to reduce the emotional weight of criticism and focus on what really matters. It's not about dismissing the feedback or pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about recognizing that this moment, this critique, is just one small piece of a much larger puzzle. Here's a practical exercise to try. The next time you receive criticism, pause and ask yourself, how much will this matter in a year? Or even a month? Often, you'll find that the sting of the moment fades when you consider the broader timeline of your life. This doesn't mean the criticism isn't valid or worth addressing. It simply means you're giving yourself the space to respond thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. By zooming out, you gain clarity, calm, and control, three things that are essential for turning criticism into growth. Think about a time when criticism felt overwhelming. Maybe it was a harsh comment from a coworker, a critique from a loved one, or even a self-critical thought. Now imagine looking back at that moment from a year in the future. Does it still feel as heavy? Chances are it doesn't. That's the power of perspective. It doesn't erase the criticism, but it changes how you experience it. It reminds you that this moment, like all moments, is temporary. So, here's a question for you. What's one criticism that feels smaller when you zoom out? Maybe it's something you've been carrying around, letting it weigh on your mind. Take a moment to step back to see it from a distance. How does it look now? By practicing this kind of perspective, you're not just managing criticism, you're mastering it. And in doing so, you're building a resilience that allows you to face life's challenges with calm, clarity, and a sense of purpose that goes far beyond the moment. The Stoic Reset is a powerful way to turn criticism into a moment of renewal rather than a source of lingering frustration. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, often reminded himself that every morning is a new beginning. This idea isn't just about waking up to a new day, it's about waking up to a new mindset. When criticism comes your way, it's easy to carry it around like a weight, replaying the words in your head and letting them color your mood. But what if instead you saw it as a chance to reset, to reflect, recalibrate, and start fresh? That's the Stoic approach, using criticism as a reset button, not a stumbling block. Think of it this way: criticism, no matter how harsh or fair, is just a moment in time. It's not who you are, it's just something that happened. The Stoic Reset is about acknowledging that moment, learning from it, and then letting it go. It's about refusing to let resentment or self-doubt take root. Instead of dwelling on what was said, you focus on what you can do next. This doesn't mean ignoring the feedback or pretending it didn't sting. It means choosing to move forward with intention, using the experience as a springboard for growth rather than a weight holding you back. One practical way to practice the Stoic Reset is through writing. Try this exercise. Write a letter of forgiveness to the person who criticized you. This isn't about excusing their behavior or giving them a pass. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional baggage that criticism can create. In the letter, acknowledge the feedback, reflect on what you've learned, and then express your decision to let go of any lingering negativity. You don't even have to send the letter. The act of writing it is enough to help you process the experience and move forward with a clear mind and an open heart. Here's the beauty of the Stoic Reset: it's entirely within your control. You don't need anyone else's permission or participation to let go of resentment and start fresh. All it takes is a decision, a choice to see criticism not as a judgment, but as an invitation to reflect, grow, and reset. This mindset shift doesn't just help you handle feedback better, it transforms how you approach challenges in general. You start to see every setback, every critique, as a chance to recalibrate and keep moving forward. So, here's something to reflect on. How can you use criticism as a fresh start? What would it look like to approach feedback with curiosity and openness, rather than defensiveness or resentment? The Stoic Reset isn't just a tool for resilience, it's a way to reclaim your power, your peace, and your progress. And when you embrace it, you'll find that criticism isn't something to fear. It's something to learn from, grow through, and ultimately leave behind as you step into a brighter, more intentional future. Community plays a vital role in how we navigate criticism, though it's not always the first thing we think of when feedback stings. The Stoics, despite their emphasis on self-reliance, deeply valued the wisdom and support of others. Epictetus, who spent much of his life teaching and learning from those around him, often spoke about the importance of surrounding ourselves with people who can offer honest, thoughtful counsel. He believed that while we can't control how others perceive us, we can choose whose opinions we value and whose guidance we seek. This idea is a game changer when it comes to handling criticism. It's not about isolating ourselves or trying to go it alone. It's about building a circle of trust where feedback becomes a tool for growth rather than a blow to our confidence. A supportive community does more than just offer advice, it provides perspective. When criticism feels personal or overwhelming, it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. But trusted friends, mentors, or colleagues can help us see things more clearly. They can point out blind spots we might not notice on our own, or they can remind us of our strengths when we're too focused on our flaws. This kind of perspective is invaluable. It helps us separate the useful feedback from the noise, and it gives us the encouragement we need to keep moving forward, even when the road feels rocky. Here's a practical way to tap into the power of community. Seek feedback from people you trust. Not everyone's opinion carries the same weight, and that's okay. Identify a few individuals in your life who know you well, who understand your goals, and who genuinely want to see you succeed. These are the people whose feedback can truly help you grow. When you receive criticism, whether from a stranger or a colleague, take it to them. Ask for their honest perspective. Does this feedback resonate with you? How can I use it to improve? By involving others in the process, you're not just building resilience, you're building a network of support that makes the journey of growth feel less lonely. So, here's a question to reflect on. Who in your life helps you see criticism clearly? Is it a friend, a mentor, or perhaps a family member? take a moment to think about the people who offer you both honesty and encouragement, who challenge you to grow while reminding you of your worth. These relationships are more than just supportive, they're transformative. They help us turn criticism from a source of doubt into a stepping stone for growth. And in doing so, they remind us that we're not just navigating life's challenges alone, we're doing it together. The Stoic legacy invites us to look beyond the moment and consider the bigger picture, our lasting impact on the world. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most eloquent voices, often spoke about the importance of living a life of purpose. He believed that our actions, our choices, and even our responses to criticism shape the legacy we leave behind. This idea is a powerful lens through which to view feedback. When we focus on the kind of person we want to become and the mark we want to leave, criticism loses its sting. It becomes less about what others think of us and more about how we can grow into the best version of ourselves. Think of it this way: criticism is like a sculptor's chisel. It might feel sharp and uncomfortable in the moment, but it's also what shapes us into something stronger, more refined, and more aligned with our values. The Stoics remind us that our legacy isn't built on perfection. It's built on how we handle imperfection, how we grow through challenges, and how we rise above the noise of petty criticism. When we shift our focus to the long-term impact of our actions, we gain the perspective needed to navigate criticism with grace and purpose. Here's a practical exercise to help you connect criticism to your legacy. Write a letter to your future self. Imagine it's 10, 20, or even 30 years from now. Reflect on the kind of person you want to be, the values you want to embody, and the impact you want to have on those around you. Then consider how the criticism you're facing today fits into that picture. Is it pointing you toward growth? Is it helping you refine your character? By framing feedback in the context of your legacy, you transform it from a momentary challenge into a stepping stone toward becoming the person you aspire to be. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine you're criticized for being too reserved in meetings, and it stings because you value being seen as a team player. Instead of reacting defensively, you take a moment to reflect on your legacy. How do you want to be remembered in your professional life? Perhaps as someone who listens deeply, speaks thoughtfully, and fosters collaboration. With that vision in mind, the criticism becomes a nudge to step out of your comfort zone, to share your ideas more confidently, and to contribute in ways that align with your long-term goals. It's not about changing who you are, it's about growing into the person you want to become. So here's a question to reflect on. How do you want to be remembered in the face of criticism? What kind of legacy do you want to leave, not just in your career or relationships, but in the way you handle life's challenges? The Stoic legacy teaches us that criticism, when approached with intention and purpose, can be a powerful tool for shaping not just who we are today, but who will be remembered as tomorrow. By focusing on the bigger picture, we rise above the noise, turning every critique into a chance to build a life of meaning, impact, and enduring strength. Let's talk about forgiveness, a concept that might seem at odds with the Stoic focus on resilience, but is actually central to their philosophy. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." This simple yet profound statement captures the essence of Stoic forgiveness. It's not about condoning someone's actions or letting them off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional weight of resentment, anger, or bitterness. Forgiveness, in the Stoic sense, is a form of self-liberation. It's choosing not to let someone else's words or actions dictate how you feel or behave. When someone criticizes us, it's natural to feel hurt, defensive, or even resentful. But holding onto those emotions doesn't punish the critic. It weighs you down. The Stoics understood that resentment is like carrying a heavy stone in your pocket. It might feel justified at first, but over time, it becomes a burden that slows you down and drains your energy. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is about setting that stone down. It's about reclaiming your peace and focusing on what truly matters, your growth, your values, and your ability to move forward. Here's where Marcus Aurelius's wisdom comes into play. When he says, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy," he's reminding us that the most powerful response to criticism isn't retaliation, it's rising above. It's refusing to let someone else's negativity change who you are or how you act. Forgiveness doesn't mean you agree with the criticism or even like the person who delivered it. It simply means you're choosing not to let their words define your emotional state. You're choosing to focus on what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, and your peace of mind. One practical way to practice Stoic forgiveness is through meditation. Set aside a few minutes each day to reflect on the criticism you've received and the emotions it stirred in you. Then imagine releasing those emotions, like letting go of a heavy weight. Visualize the critic and silently wish them well, not because they deserve it, but because it helps you move on. This exercise isn't about them, it's about you. It's about reclaiming your emotional freedom and refusing to let resentment take root in your heart. Here's something to reflect on. Who can you forgive to lighten your emotional load? Maybe it's a colleague who criticized your work, a friend who spoke harshly, or even yourself for being too hard on your own mistakes. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about choosing to let go. When you do, you'll find that criticism loses its power to hurt you. Instead, it becomes just another moment in your journey, one that you can learn from and leave behind as you move forward with clarity, calm, and a deeper sense of purpose. The Stoic Antidote offers a powerful way to neutralize the sting of criticism, turning what feels like a wound into a source of strength. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who endured slavery and hardship, taught that the key to inner peace lies in focusing on what's within our control. He famously said, "Some things are up to us and some are not." This simple yet profound idea is the foundation of the Stoic Antidote, a way to shift our focus from the external noise of criticism to the internal calm of our own thoughts and actions. When we remember that we can't control what others say, but we can control how we respond, criticism loses its power to hurt us. It becomes less about what's being said and more about how we choose to engage with it. Picture criticism as a storm raging outside your window. You can't stop the wind or the rain, but you can choose how to weather it. Do you let it shake you, or do you find shelter in your own resilience? That's the essence of the Stoic Antidote. It's not about ignoring the storm, it's about recognizing that you have the tools to stay safe and steady, no matter how fierce the winds blow. By focusing on what's within your control, your mindset, your values, your response, you reclaim your power. You stop being a victim of circumstance and start being the architect of your own peace. Here's a practical way to apply this. Create a Stoic toolkit for criticism. This toolkit can be as simple as a list of principles or quotes that remind you of your inner strength. For example, you might include Marcus Aurelius's reminder that you have power over your mind, not outside events, or Seneca's advice to respond, don't react. Keep this toolkit handy on your phone, in a notebook, or even as a mental checklist. When criticism comes your way, turn to your toolkit. Use these principles to ground yourself, to shift your perspective, and to respond with clarity rather than emotion. Over time, this practice becomes second nature, helping you navigate criticism with calm and confidence. So, here's something to reflect on. What Stoic principle can you turn to when criticism stings? Is it the idea of focusing on what's within your control? Or perhaps the reminder that criticism is just an external event like the weather? By building your own Stoic toolkit, you're not just preparing for criticism, you're equipping yourself to thrive in the face of it. and in doing so, you transform what once felt like a burden into a source of empowerment, resilience, and growth. Criticism, when left unaddressed, can feel like a weight, something that lingers in the back of your mind, creating doubt or frustration. But the Stoics offer a powerful remedy: action. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most practical thinkers, once said, "Action is the antidote to despair." These words hold a profound truth. When we take action in response to criticism, we shift from feeling stuck to feeling empowered. It's not enough to simply reflect on feedback or process it. Emotionally, growth happens when we translate that insight into tangible steps forward. Action transforms criticism from a source of anxiety into a catalyst for progress. Think of it like this: criticism is a mirror showing us areas where we can improve. But a mirror alone doesn't change anything. It's what we do with that reflection that matters. Maybe someone points out that you tend to rush through tasks, leaving room for errors. Instead of dwelling on the critique, you could set a small, actionable goal. For the next week, take an extra 5 minutes to review your work before submitting it. That simple step turns the feedback into a concrete opportunity for growth. It's not about overhauling your entire approach overnight. It's about taking one step, then another, until you've built momentum. Here's the beauty of action: it doesn't just help us grow, it also restores our sense of agency. Criticism can sometimes leave us feeling powerless, as if we're at the mercy of others' opinions. But when we take action, we reclaim control. We're no longer passive recipients of feedback, we're active participants in our own development. This shift in mindset is what Seneca meant when he called action an antidote. It's a way to move past despair, frustration, or self-doubt and into a space of purpose and progress. Let's make this practical. The next time you receive criticism, try this exercise. Identify one small, actionable step you can take to address it. If someone suggests you could communicate more clearly, set a goal to pause and think before speaking in your next conversation. If you're told you need to improve your time management, commit to writing a to-do list each morning. The key is to keep it simple and achievable. Small actions build confidence, and confidence fuels growth. Over time, these steps add up, turning criticism into a roadmap for becoming the best version of yourself. So here's a question to reflect on. What's one step you can take today to grow from criticism? It doesn't have to be grand or life-changing, it just has to be meaningful. By taking action, you're not just responding to feedback, you're proving to yourself that you have the power to learn, adapt, and thrive. And in doing so, you're embodying one of the most transformative lessons of Stoicism. That growth isn't just something we hope for, it's something we create one step at a time. So, what have we learned today about criticism and the Stoic approach to handling it? At its core, Stoicism teaches us to see criticism not as an attack, but as an opportunity, a mirror reflecting areas where we can grow, refine, and align more closely with our values. We've explored how to shift our perception using tools like the Stoic Pause, the Stoic Filter, and the Stoic Mirror to transform feedback from a source of pain into a tool for progress. We've talked about the importance of self-awareness, empathy, and gratitude, and how these practices can help us navigate criticism with calm and clarity. And we've seen how action, perspective, and forgiveness can turn even the harshest critiques into stepping stones for resilience. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This is the essence of the Stoic mindset. Every obstacle, every piece of criticism is an invitation to grow. It's not about avoiding challenges, it's about embracing them as opportunities to become stronger, wiser, and more aligned with who we want to be. Criticism, in this light, isn't something to fear, it's something to welcome. It's the friction that sharpens us, the resistance that makes us resilient. Now, here's where the real work begins. take a moment to reflect on your own relationship with criticism. How do you typically respond when someone critiques you? Do you find yourself defensive, frustrated, or even dismissive? Or do you see it as a chance to learn and grow? The Stoic tools we've discussed today, whether it's shifting your perception, practicing empathy, or taking actionable steps, are here to help you reframe criticism as a gift, not a burden. The question is, will you use them? If you found value in this video, consider subscribing to the channel for more insights on Stoicism, resilience, and personal growth. Share your thoughts in the comments below. How do you handle criticism? And what's one Stoic principle you'll take with you from today? Remember, every critique is an opportunity, every obstacle a teacher. Embrace the journey and let criticism be your guide to becoming the best version of yourself. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay